difference between augmented reality, virtual reality, and mixed reality. It is a range of experiences. On one hand, we have virtual reality, which is a total immersive experience where you put on a headset and you are disconnected from your environment. Everything you see and interact is a 3D generated object. And on the other hand, for augmented reality, you have a connection to your environment, like in HoloLens, and you have some extra information, maybe 3D or maybe audio information that's available to you, which is augmenting your reality. Also, we have mobile phone applications like Pokemon Go. You are looking through the glass of your phone and you're able to find 3D objects in the real world. And this whole range of experiences we call mixed reality. And short, it's called XR.
Yeah, hi, Rudi.
Hello.
So we have a session together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had several sessions today already with remote support, and one was about a game, guitar playing, and now it's about training.
Yeah.
Great. Maybe introduce yourself, and then we can start with your presentation.
Yeah, I will do that. Please let me know when you put my slides on. And because I'm already in full screen, so I cannot see you at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you put my slides on, then I'll start.
Yeah, I can. Then I remove myself, and you can start. So the slides are visible now. You can start.
Okay, super. So hi to you all, the public that is actually listening to this conference. My name is Rudi Dullens, and I'm the CEO of a company called Bluetee. Basically, I'm supporting organizations that we work with in creating effective and efficient training environments. And while doing that, I'm running into issues sometimes where the customer is actually getting an XR or basically an any reality solution that as soon as they get it is basically outdated already and needs to be changed. And this is a topic that I want to discuss today with you. My background is technical, although I'm not a programmer. I'm actually more from the hardware side. And within the company, I'm the link basically between the customer and our programmers. So the topics that I want to discuss today is shortly introduce Bluetee. I'll be doing that with video, and I hope that the sound works. We tested it, but you never know. Then I want to elaborate just a little bit about effective knowledge transfer and basically how do we remember things. And then I'm going to explain a little bit a training challenge. So basically a business case, what we see a lot in the world. And then I'm going to take you into a different approach, the way we see the world. And again, this is all focused on basically any reality. So we are not really focused on AR or VR as a company, but we do a broad scale of reality solutions, basically. So let me start by introducing Bluetee. So basically, as you could see in the video, is that we create virtual solutions for our customers focused on education and training. And basically, we try to do this in the most flexible way as possible. If you look at the markets that we are in, this is basically a broad scale. So the engine that we use to actually drive our applications are basically open engines that like Unreal or like Unity 3D that we use for development. But on top of that, we really create it into a training application, and we do that basically in markets like this. But more importantly, what we see is that a lot of areas that it's actually in is comparable. So it's like a technical job that you need to do, or it's related to safety, or it's related to operational processes that you do in your organization. But why do we do that? So basically we do this because we strongly believe in the effectiveness of simulation and serious games, or maybe you would like to call it game-based learning. And the effectiveness is pretty high, because if you look at training, then it's important that you actually train as close to practice as possible. So maybe there are people that have heard of the cone of Dale, which is basically a graph that explains that the closer you get to practice, the better you basically grasp the knowledge. And once you grasp the knowledge really in an effective way, it basically sticks in your brain. So looking at how we basically keep knowledge in our minds, there was a professor in the 1800s that actually created sort of an algorithm that could calculate how we forget things. So remembering is basically about not forgetting. And this is called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. So, and basically this curve looks like this. It's you gain a lot of information at some point, and then it fades away really quickly. But Ebbinghaus also researched that if you do this on a frequent basis, then you see that this curve is getting less steep. So it's basically flattening out, and this is basically what you normally do in training. So if you, for instance, want to master an instrument, let's say a piano, then you cannot simply start playing a piano. You need to rehearse a lot, because a piano is a complex instrument, so you really need to do a lot of rehearsing. So you could actually do it in a very simple way without very much rehearsing, but that would maybe only master you a song, so that you could actually play a song on the piano. But if you really want to master the instrument, you need to rehearse a lot. And this rehearsing basically is what in our brain happens when you want to take the knowledge really to the next level. And that is basically what we try to do. So if you look at ways to do that, basically it's about making mistakes, especially in technical areas, also breaking things, and doing it in a safe way. And this is especially something that in an XR solution, of course, you could easily do. Because some things that you want to train in real life, you simply cannot train in that real life, because it would be too dangerous, or the effect on cost or unavailability of an asset would be simply too big. And doing that in a virtual world, of course, you can simply reset it by clicking a button, and then you can start over your training again. So this really takes advantage of the fact that rehearsing is really creating effectiveness of all the knowledge that you want to gain. On the other hand, of course, on the right side of this graph, you see that availability and consistency, so like an instructor, a real-life instructor, can have issues with Monday or Friday. So you have been teaching the whole week, and at the end of the week, of course, it's kind of a struggle then, still being on point again. but also you are really depending on the group that you're teaching, where in a virtual solution where let's say an instructor is actually built in, it doesn't matter. It's a computer and it will always tell the things and the stuff that you want to know in exactly the same way. So, and then on the other end, you can create a challenging environment. So that really relates to making mistakes and breaking things, where you can create an environment that actually makes you train based on mistakes that you're allowed to make, which is a very effective way of learning. So maybe you in the audience have used a hammer and some nails for carpeting, like do-it-yourself projects, and created something with that. And probably you can also remember the first time that actually you hit your hammer on your thumb and it hurt. And actually, me talking about this, if you had this experience, you probably feel it again at this moment. Well, this is something that you can do in a virtual environment, but cannot do in a real life environment. So let's take a look at a real life challenge that we see that organizations face on a regular basis. And that is what we call the training challenge. And that is how basically technology affects the knowledge transfer. So meet John. John is an innovation manager in a large company, and John has seen a lot of reality and technology stuff in his life already. So he's pretty happy, and he is also pretty confident that he is able to actually work with this and introduce technology like this in his organization. But at some point, the maintenance crew actually went over to him with a training challenge because they needed to do a repair that basically seldomly happens, and they were not really trained properly for that. So John said, well, let's try virtual reality training. Let's see if we can create something that actually helps you in your practice to train better and to actually gain the knowledge. So basically, John started the regular development process, which, as you all might know, takes a while to do. So you need to build and plan and release and test and deploy, and then do that all over again in probably agile development methods. And by doing that, basically, time goes away. So time passes, and while John was waiting basically for this solution to arrive, it took a couple of months. During this process, updating and stuff like that. So at some point, they actually got their virtual reality training tool. And you can see that basically when they got it, they were pretty happy about it. But then while playing with it, they saw that basically all the procedures within the organization, or at least a lot of these procedures, have changed. So now you created a training tool based on old procedures. So basically, this is something that you need to prevent, because if you need to change your application all the time because of changing procedures, it becomes very complex. And so basically, John had a few choices. The first choice basically was spend more money, because the training tool he got was basically sort of a black box. To create virtual reality training, of course, you need specialistic knowledge, like knowledge from. Sorry for that, my doorbell is ringing. So you need specialist knowledge like programmers and 3D developers. So people like that, they cost a lot of money. So when you need to update your application again, then that also takes a lot of money. But on the other hand, if you don't do that, then basically you can throw away your application, because if your procedures have changed, then basically your application doesn't work. So basically, John was in despair and he didn't know what to do. And he had a training application created that didn't match the reality anymore. So for that, I want to move on to the next step, and that's basically, I want to explain to you a slightly different approach. So first of all, if I look at the development process that normally the creation of an XR application goes through, it's basically that you have a 3D world. So that could be anything, could be a 3D scan, could be a 360-degree video, could be anything basically. And if you want to use it for training, you need to interact with it, which basically is that we need to add interaction to it. And the next step then is, of course, you have to create training scenarios. And by doing that, basically you create relation between the training scenario and the interactivity. And this is basically creating flow for the trainee. And then we are going to deploy them. But by doing that, every time you want to change your scenarios, you need to deploy again. Unless, of course, within your application, you've created a scenario editing tool, which is feasible, but then every time you want to do something with it, it actually, sorry, okay. Actually, give me 1 second. I got a message in the private channel. No, I didn't. Sorry for that. Kind of disturbing. So basically, what happens is that you get an environment that is very, very rigid. It is not very flexible. So to explain this a little bit better, it could look like this. So let's say we have a button and we have 2 lights, and then you ask your programmer to actually program that if you touch the button, the lights go on, and if you touch the button again, the lights go off. So let me do that. I'll touch the button, light go on, touch the button again, lights go off. And basically, this is because a programmer actually has created the link between the lights and the button. But every time you want to change this scenario, you basically have to go through the same development process again. So you need to rethink everything that you've done before, which is not very flexible. So, and this basically comes back to what I just explained. You create a 3D model, add the interaction, and then create your scenarios, and then you give it to the end user. And every time when you make a change, you have to go over this process again. So the approach I want to discuss a little bit further is comparable to what you see here, but with a slight difference. The difference is that, first of all, we have the same 3D model, 3D environment, 360-degree video, doesn't matter basically. Now, secondly, we add interactivity. But instead of creating the scenarios, we basically give that application to the end user. And of course, this application doesn't do anything. It only holds a 3D model with interactivity. But the important step comes after the deployment, which is basically then you create your scenarios. And you do that through a separate external system. I'm getting back to that in the later stage. So what this basically does, it really disconnects the stuff that you see, which is basically your 3D model and the interactivity, from what you do, which is basically your training scenario. So the way you actually flow through your application. So basically, on the left side, you see the specialist knowledge, programmers, 3D developers, UX designers, whatever you have. And on the right side, you get the specialist on the customer side, which is actually the people that have knowledge about the asset that is actually in the virtual environment. So let me take back the example I had, which is basically the same lamp, lights and the button. But here you see that there is basically no relation yet between the button and the light. At least it's not pre-programmed. So by basically clicking the button, the lights go on, I could make the lights go on, and by clicking it again, I could make the lights go off. But I could also do this. So I click it again, and now just one light goes on. And this is basically a big change, because without any programming, I basically changed the scenario and made a different link so that I could do different things. So let's say this left light that you see is simply broken in a scenario. I could actually click it, but I could also do something like this. Like this light goes on, and then that light goes on. It basically doesn't matter, because you don't need any programming anymore that actually relates to this, to the button and the lights. So there is no relation, and every object in your virtual world actually holds the properties that actually belongs to it. A light can go on, it can go off, nothing more than that. So basically what you would do is put it in some sort of a flowchart scenario. So, and for that, I want to explain a little bit about how we do that. And that is basically using a platform that is called Virtual Studio, which is a platform that we created actually to make this happen, to disconnect the programming part from what you don't need to program. So, and if you look at the infrastructure then basically what you have on the left side is sort of a 3D model, or again, whatever 3D type of environment you want to create, which is the basis of your solution. And then if you look at the top bar, then you see there the XR solution basically that you want to connect to your 3D model. And in between, we have this layer that we actually talk to in some sort of an API that can actually deliver a lot of training tools, such as a virtual instructor, but also multiplayer support, or scenario editing toolkits, or maybe even tracking the performance of a student in the end. So basically this layer in this disconnection actually creates the ability to make sure that you can be future-proof for any reality solution that you want to use in the future that is even not known by now. So just diving a little bit into Virtual Studio, it's basically a web-based platform that doesn't need any programming. But it's also some sort of a learning management application that actually can also drive your users, but also measure your training performance. So if you look at that, you could actually create and change training levels without any programming skills. So it's basically making relations between objects in your virtual world. It holds user management and single sign-on for other applications, but also you can do training performance in there. And that is basically all taken out of the XR application, because then it becomes flexible for future use. But also you can track competences, or maybe have connectivity to other systems. To give you an idea on how that looks, you see here an overview of, for instance, your personal results, where you can track your own score, or maybe a high score list that is actually available in here, where you can actually basically compete to your peers, or have an overview and export this data for any use, so that you can actually create smart training performance data. And looking at the editor, basically this looks like what you normally would do in an environment where you like edit videos. So basically you have this timeline on the bottom that makes you control the flow of the training for the trainee in the end. Yeah? To give you another example of this, how this looks like, it basically is configuring the interaction with all the objects that are in there. But also it's more, because actually it allows you to create flexibility in your training. So basically after we done this, of course, John was very happy, because he could actually change his training, his virtual reality training, very easily, and to have it match the real world environment and the real world procedures without actually having to go back to programming again. So it's not that we are against programming, because that's basically what we do, but programming entails more than only just changing code. So once you have your application ready and you need to change it again, you have to test it thoroughly, because if you don't test it, it might have some glitches in there that actually is not very beneficial to your customer. So, and if you have to test it all over again, it's going to take a lot of time. So, for instance, as an anecdote, we run an application that holds over 42 training levels, where some of the levels actually have a play time, so a training time of over 45 minutes. So if you want to test this application, you need to go through all the scenarios. And this application actually is in 2 languages. So really thorough testing would actually mean a couple of weeks work every time you change something in code. While if you only change a simple scenario or the flow, you only have to basically test that part. So what I want to do at the end of my presentation here is that I want to show you 2 short videos on that actually show the end product that was created doing it with the infrastructure that I actually explained in my presentation. So I want to demonstrate it, and then I'll stop sharing, and if there are any questions, then don't hesitate to actually put them in the stream so that we can talk a little bit more about that. So this video was actually very simple, like an interactive manual type of instruction, which was created by through Virtual Studio, which is basically a very simple do action type of training. But the next one I want to show you is actually a full free play game. We use the term game-based learning for this, but basically it's a game where you can experience unsafe situations in a chemical factory, which gives you the feeling of full free play, but still your training will be structured.
Okay, get all the tools you need, so you can check and change the engine oil. How long must you minimally wait after the engine shuts down and before you can work on oil check?
So this was actually an aerospace example. So the process chemical factory example is coming right up. But here you could see that the infrastructure facilitates for desktop training in this case, but also for virtual reality. So on the last one, I want to show you.
You are not wearing the necessary protective gear to go outside.
So basically, this concludes my presentation for today. I hope that I was able to give you some information on how you could actually create flexible and durable training environments that could actually help you in supporting customers even better if you are actually in the training area. And what I'll do is I'll stop my presentation from sharing, and then we can answer some questions if there are.
Yeah, maybe we wait a little while because I see no questions. I see a lot of likes and I see a lot of positive feedback here in the chat, but no questions yet. That's a great story.
I don't see the feedback, unfortunately.
We say very insightful and thanks for sharing and things like this. But anyway, we can also raise questions in the Discord chat channel later on, and I think you will answer it, Rudi.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
No problem.
So I think we can close this session then for now. Many thanks.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.